Good morning. My name is John Harrington. I'm the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety for the state of Minnesota, and with me is Attorney General Keith Ellison.
Good morning.
As a cop for 40 years, I learned early on that the time to create a partnership wasn't in the middle of a crisis. And having moved into the Department of Public Safety, I also recognize that the time to discuss deadly force encounters is not when one is occurring. We're here today to announce a working group that will allow us to take a forward-looking, transparent view to arrive at recommendations for law enforcement and the community about how do we as a state reduce deadly force encounters between community members and the police. Providing a place and a framework for these conversations to discuss how these incidents can be both prevented and best handled will increase, I believe, the trust between peace officers and the communities they serve. As you can see behind me, we are convening a diverse group comprised of people from a variety of backgrounds and communities around the state. This is quite literally a statewide effort, and this working group will provide an opportunity for academics, folks in the judiciary, prosecutors, police officers, the community, and other stakeholders to talk about police-involved deadly force encounters and how can we reduce them and how can we handle them in the most trustworthy fashion possible. The framework that we're going to operate out of is designed to ensure that all voices, and I want to repeat that, all voices are heard in developing recommendations. And we're going to be looking at everything, quite literally from top to bottom. State and local policy changes, possibly changes to police procedures, legislative initiatives, training, technology, community healing, and finally, we really are thinking about this as an opportunity to have a best practices look at what can police officers and investigators do when there is an unfortunate and tragic loss of life. The working group, as planned, will convene a series of 3 hearings. First one will be investigations, oversights, and accountability. Second one, we'll talk about prevention and training, and also talk about community healing. And then we're also going to finish up with policy and legal implications. We expect to solicit feedback statewide in several ways, including witness testimony at the hearings themselves, online submissions, public comments. People can write to us, they can email us, they can come and actually speak at the hearings themselves. Each hearing will have at least 3 to 4 panels, and the panels will consist of 3 to 4 witnesses who provide testimony relevant to the theme of the day. Panels and witnesses will represent the community writ large with the big C, academia, subject matter experts, law enforcement, and prosecutors. And the hearings will be open to the public. My expectation and what we promise is that a final report will be prepared that will include recommendations. But unlike many final reports that you probably have seen come and go over the course of life, this is a final report that is not the final report. It's in fact the beginning. It will be the beginning of the real work of actually reducing police-involved deadly force encounters. That is what we are committed to do as a group. And with no further ado, I turn it over to my esteemed colleague, Attorney General Keith Ellison.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. And let me thank all of the members of the working group as well. We have an esteemed group that represents diverse walks of life in our great state of Minnesota. We are very consciously and deliberately not a metrocentric group. We believe it is critical to reach out beyond the bounds of the metro and make sure that every part of our state is included in this critical conversation. There are officer-involved shootings that happen all over the state. Some of the ones that hit the press the most may be located in the metro, but that is not where they happen. They happen everywhere. So we're going to have a broad conversation. There's no doubt that whenever we see an officer-involved shooting, there are deep and very important emotions that go along with that. A lot of conversation happens. And we cannot simply work on this issue in the wake of a heart-rending, emotional, critical issue. We've got to talk about these things when the waters have calmed a little bit, and we can have a constructive community dialogue, and that is what we're attempting to do. But the impacts are on families and loved ones of people who died. They're on the officers involved. They're on community residents that happen. They're on law enforcement departments concerned, whole cities, whole regions. We are united in that we are concerned about this issue. Therefore, we're going to come together as a state and discuss this issue. and make some proposals. What proposals? I don't know. We're going to find out. The conversations that we will have will yield the prescriptions that will be offered. So I walk into this as your Attorney General, very open-minded, willing to work in a constructive, open-hearted way to come up with the best results for everyone in our community. That includes regular citizens, law enforcement, prosecutors, everybody. The fact is, I come to this conversation through a particular route. I am from North Minneapolis. I have worked in the criminal justice system myself. I used to run the Legal Rights Center. I've been a public defender. Now I'm a prosecutor. And I've been a legislator, state and federal. And all of these things I will bring to bear to this conversation. But it's not about just me and the commissioner. Mostly, it's about all of us. We have selected a diverse group who will help us lead this conversation. But I want to emphasize that the members of the working group represent certain sectors that are critical to this conversation. We are expecting them to channel the groups that they represent to make sure that the voices are heard, and we are including community meetings, public portals, online submissions, and other things so that we have the broadest, deepest conversation we can have so we can have the best outcomes that are possible. No person, no community ever wants to see a shooting happen, and I can assure you that this effort, this working group to reduce deadly encounters involving law enforcement and community is, I think, very worthy. And I just want to commend our commissioner, because talking about this issue is courageous. Of course, there will be critics on all sides. But what's more important is that we come together as a community and figure out how we're going to move forward. And this is a good time to do it. And I'm quite honored to be working with Commissioner Harrington in this effort. And so now I'd like to invite members of the working group who are present with us today to introduce themselves, and then we'll announce the other members as well. So would you like, why don't we start from right here? Go on.
My name is Matt Gottschalk. I'm the Director of Public Safety in Corcoran, and I hope to bring some outstate experience and perspective from the different agencies that I've served and different communities that I've served in the past.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Clarence Castile. I'm the uncle of Philando Castile, a young man who was shot and killed by St. Anthony police officer in Falcon Heights in 2016. I'm excited to be here working today with Attorney General Keith Ellison and Commissioner John Harrington. I'm looking very forward to doing this good work with them. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Brian Peters. I'm the Executive Director of the Minnesota Police and Peace Officers Association.
Thank you.
Good morning, Commissioner, Attorney General Ellison, my friend. My name is Mark Rubin. I'm the St. Louis County Attorney, the true heart of Minnesota. People think it's a metro, no. But I've been a prosecutor since 1978. I'm currently the county attorney. I'm in my third term in St. Louis County. Personally, I think I've handled about 9 or 10 reviews of officer-involved shootings, even just since my election county attorney. So it's an honor to be a part of this group. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good morning, my name is Eliza Darris. I am an organizer with the ACLU of Minnesota. I also coordinate our Smart Justice campaign, and we're really eager to be part of this initiative and to help to come up with some really good policy.
And Ms. Anika Bowie is not a member of the working group, but she has an announcement to make based on her role.
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone. My name is Anika Bowie. I'm currently the Vice President for the Minneapolis NAACP, previous Chair for the Criminal Justice Reform Committee. And although we are not on this working group, we support this courageous work, and we're really grateful and thankful to see this flourish.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much. Let me announce some of the other members. We also have included is Madeira Arredondo, Chief of Police in Minneapolis, and Hodan Hassan, Minnesota State Representative, District 62B, Bill Ingebretson, Minnesota Senator, District 8, the Honorable Mark Kapelhoff, who is a Minnesota 4th Judicial District Judge, Dr. Brittany Lewis, University of Minnesota Center for Urban and Regional Affairs, and Chanda Baker Smith, Chanda Smith Baker, the Minneapolis Foundation, Kevin Torkelson, Olmsted County Sheriff, representing the sheriffs, and Dr. Artika Tyner, University of St. Thomas School of Law. And we also will have a slot for a tribal law representative who is a critical member who will be announced. So with that, I think that we're prepared to answer your questions and get to work. So thank you all very much.
So where do you see the recommendations going? Where will these recommendations go once the final report is put together?
Well, there's at least two parts to that. The first part is we have agreed that we will make a recommendation to the legislature and a report to the legislature. So there will be a report to the legislature that's a very public document. But more importantly than that, what I hope this will be a set of recommendations that will go out to public safety, the police officers and across the state, to give them a guideline to best practices. It'll certainly be used internally in my own shop with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which does the majority of the officer-involved shooting investigations right now. But more importantly, frankly, I think than either of those is it's going to go out to communities. What I really hope will come out of this is a transparent view so that communities will know what to expect, and so that when they have one of these tragedies in their midst, that they will know that they can trust the process and that what the process is, and that they can have their answers and their questions answered right away.
You mentioned the BCA. There's no BCA representative. Maybe it's you who's going to.
I'm the representative of the BCA. They work for me, so that helps also. Yes.
Was that perspective? Was somebody not from the BCA, or not having someone from the BCA on the panel a explicit decision given the concerns that have been raised about that agency's role?
There's two ways to answer that question. First of all, we could not include everybody on the group. So if you think about it, there's a lot of other agencies that are not also on the panel. But in point of fact, as the director of the commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, I'm there to represent the BCA's voice. But in addition to that, we're going to have testimony from the BCA. So they'll be there in hearing fashion to make sure that their voice is heard in testimony as to how they currently do their work. So I didn't feel like that we were shortcutting them at all. They will have my voice there representing them, and they will have their director there testifying, so that the working group will have a clear understanding of what our current best practices are.
Commissioner Harrington, Jeff Bannon, Associated Press, Minneapolis. So how much of this working group is in response to the Justine Ruschet-Gehman the testimony that came out about the BCA either engaging in a cover-up, protecting officers at the scene, or just being incompetent during their investigation initially?
Attorney General Ellis and I talked about this in January of 2019, months before the Justine Ruschet decision was made. We were already on making sure that the community's voices and that best practices were being followed. So months before that decision happened, we were already in the planning stages for this. So I would say, while it's certainly something that we have taken note of, it was not a deciding factor in either initiating this or continuing the work.
Is there a model for the type of work that you're trying to undertake this year elsewhere in the country that has worked particularly well in trying to examine these types of issues?
We'll look at various models, but we're going to look at various models, but there is no single model that we're plugging into from the very start. We are going to take a broad look at this issue, include a lot of voices, look at different kind of ways of moving forward. But at this point, we're not prescribing any outcomes. And I think if we locked into a model, we would be predetermining what our outcome is. So,
Attorney General, there's been some sort of inconsistencies about how prosecutors handle this, from considering it themselves, using a grand jury, to sort of a hybrid that we saw in the Ruschet case. Do you anticipate the outcome of this is your office is going to be more involved in these prosecutions and making decisions about whether or not officers face criminal charges?
you know, the answer to that question is we have not come to any conclusions like that, because we want to get all the voices out there, have some deliberations among ourselves, and come up with the best way to do this for the benefit of our state. There are a lot of ways to look at this. My presence here signals that we want to be part of the solution, but we are not here to say that the outcome needs to be one way or another.
Is that something you would support or oppose if it came out?
Well, the answer to that would depend upon the conversation of our prosecutors, of police, the community. It would be the product of a series of conversations before I would ever agree or disagree with the proposal that you're putting forward.
Would the AG's office even be equipped to handle investigations right now, a la Wisconsin, which has a full-on Department of Justice that the AG's in control?
You know, at this time, no. I'll be very candid with you. There would be some resource commitments that would have to be made.
Attorney General, you were in Congress at the time of the 4th Precinct situation. So you were down there as representing your constituents, your community.
Right.
Have you seen any change since then in the attitude of police agencies when it comes to investigating these situations?
You know, I think that our presence here today as community law enforcement, prosecution, everybody, signals an attitudinal shift that we cannot keep going from crisis to crisis to crisis. We've got to take a look at this and figure out what we're going to do together in a way that assures all parties concerned that there will be fairness, there will be transparency, there will be a degree of expedition and as the way we handle these things. So that's the attitudinal shift I see, that we all realize we got to get together, talk, and figure out what our plan is going to be.
A question for Mr. Castile. Do you mind stepping up? If you could just talk to us about when you were asked to do this, what was going through your mind and what you want to bring to this committee?
Well, I've had the opportunity and have been asked by several different groups to be a part of a conversation. But when I was asked by Commissioner Harrington to be a part of this group, I was really excited because as Philando's uncle, community member, member of the post board, it is an honor to be able to bring something to this table, to this floor, to this speaking group here to try to do something positive for our community. And the community and cops working together, rebuilding trust and legitimacy, that's, what we have to do. And I'm like I said, I'm honored to be a part of this.
So, if there's no other questions, we want to thank all of you for being here.
Attorney General Ellison, if we may take this opportunity, can you talk a little bit about this settlement in the Equifax case you just announced? This $600 million settlement?
You know what? I would love to do that, but I'm going to decline that invitation to keep the focus where it should be, and I'll be happy to talk to you after.
Talk to you outside?
Yep.
Great, thank
All
you.
right.
Can I just ask one more question, please, of Commissioner Harrington, and that is, well, part of this, or why doesn't the BCA accelerate the release of officer-involved shooting video, either from body cams, squad cars, and why do you have to have the governor get involved and press for the release of video?
BCA and the Department of Public Safety follows the law, and the law is very specific in terms of data practices about when can you release body cam or other video coverage, and then there's a practical matter of trying to make sure that investigations are not done in a way that cannot be completed successfully. My conversations with both county attorneys about when do they want to see video released has been consistent, that they're concerned about tainting of witnesses and tainting of evidence if it's released prematurely. And so the BCA has maintained its stand. It says we will follow the data practices law. The local law enforcement chief of police or director of public safety really is the person that has to make that decision.
Is that something you're going to look at with this review?
It is one of the things that I hope that we look at as part of this working group. I want to look at topics including both technology and the media as part and parcel of what are the proper responses to police-involved deadly force encounters. How do we reduce those? I think body cams have been a part of that. But I don't know that they're the entire answer. What is the policy implications of those? And then the media piece of what should the relationship between the investigative agency, the local law enforcement agency, and the media be as we're trying to make sure that justice is given?
Commissioner, there's.
One last question, go ahead.
If you can step behind the mic, there was an impression after what happened to Mr. Castile's nephew that the BCA was concerned with clearing the officer more than with finding out what happened, and that may not be deserved, but that was the impression out in the community. Have there been internal conversations at all in the BCA about how these things are approached?
Since I've been here since January, I'm not aware of any conversations about that. I have been having this conversation with Drew Evans, the superintendent of the BCA, about making sure that that his officers and his investigations are done in a proper and a thoughtful manner, with justice as the ultimate outcome of any investigation. So I don't have any information about what happened prior to that at this time.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.